My brothers and sisters, I'm delighted that we're able to share this beautiful word this evening as the Church offers to us such powerful readings and such beautiful prayers. And yet we can't help but note the strangeness of the day. To be in an empty cathedral on Holy Thursday, the day when we as a church celebrate both the institution of the priesthood and the institution of the Eucharist, is unheard of. This Holy Thursday is a day that is cherished by so many of our faithful who recognize the Eucharist as the center of their lives and are propelled by that gift to go forth imitating Jesus, who came to serve rather than to be served, as we heard in the gospel this evening. I know how painful it is for so many of you that you're not able to be here in person this evening. Certainly this day is appreciated not only by the faithful, but also by our priests. It's cherished by our priests who give thanks to God this day for the gift of priesthood, being that it is so bound up with the gift of the Eucharist. Seeing themselves as servants, I suspect that my brother priests are all feeling a little bit out of sorts this evening, that they're not gathering with those whom they are committed to serve. It's a day that will always be important for me as well, not only for the above-mentioned reasons, but also because it was on Holy Thursday 4 years ago that I was named Archbishop of this Archdiocese. I would like to suggest, however, this evening that it's precisely the strangeness of this day that gives a new emphasis to what we celebrate and to the readings that we just heard. Our readings today focus on two extraordinary actions of self-gift, certainly in the context of the Passover that we heard about in our first reading this evening. But those two extraordinary actions of self-gift are, first of all, the humble self-emptying expressed in the washing of the feet that we heard about in the gospel, and the total gift of self as Jesus feeds us with his very body and blood, what we heard in the second reading. Those two events, of course, are tied to what we will commemorate tomorrow, the gift of Jesus' very life on the cross. In a world anxious over COVID-19, the actions of Jesus give us undeniable proof of our God's great love for us. Imagine the love that would motivate such humility, such sacrifice, such concern for our nourishment and our destiny. No matter what challenges might be before us tomorrow, whether it be sickness of body or anxiety of spirit, financial insecurity, we know that Jesus is there, loving us in the midst, giving of himself to us. We're never alone, never abandoned, but rather lifted up by a God who humbles himself to wash our feet and to pour out his life for us. It's intriguing for me that Jesus reminds his apostles twice in the course of that first Holy Thursday that we are called to imitate him. As I have done, he said, so you should do in the case of the washing of the feet. And then do this in memory of me in the case of the Eucharist. The servant who loves us abundantly in this crucially important evening emphasizes that our path ahead has to be one of self-emptying. Our focus then this evening shouldn't be completely on what we receive, but also on what we give. It's a call to heroic generosity. As Pope Francis celebrated World Youth Day in an empty St. Peter's Basilica last weekend, he spoke a message to the world's youth that should resonate with each one of us, no matter our age. This is what he said: "Feel called yourselves to put your lives on the line. Do not be afraid to devote your life to God and to others. It pays. For life is a gift we receive only when we give ourselves away. And our deepest joy comes from saying yes to love, without ifs and buts, as Jesus did for us." Certainly, my brothers and sisters, we've seen that kind of heroic generosity in these days, as we've watched the drama of the coronavirus spread from country to country, as people put their very lives at risk to serve those who are sick and those who are in need. Now, not all of us have medical training, but we all have the capacity in these challenging days to give of ourselves, to follow the example that Christ gave in the upper room. It could be something as simple as a phone call to an isolated neighbor, isolated from family and friends, or offering prayers for our first responders and public servants, or offering sacrifices, even our Eucharistic fast, for those most in need these days. We are each called to feed and to wash, however we can do that. Our current crisis has reminded us of our interconnectedness. What happens in a far-off town in China or in Lombardy has an impact on us in the Twin Cities. That's true for the good as well. The sacrifices that we make here and now can have a positive impact on those we have never met. We give thanks this evening for that powerful example that Jesus the servant gives to us. We see the way in which he totally trusts his Father, being willing to empty himself of everything that he has because of his love of God the Father and his love for us. Every time, my brothers and sisters, that we have the opportunity to participate in Mass, whether it be at a distance or up front, we recognize how it is that Christ has given us such a great gift, a gift that every time that Mass is celebrated, no matter how glorious or how humble, that Jesus is actually present there, that he gives to us himself so that we can offer that to his Father. He gives us the very offering that we need to make to God the Father. That's how great is his love. Often people ask me about what was the most magnificent Mass I've ever attended. And I had lived in Rome for so many years, people always expect me to speak about St. Peter's, and indeed they do such a beautiful job there. Or I can certainly remember beautiful liturgies in Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. I can think of beautiful liturgies here in this Cathedral of St. Paul. But the liturgy that always captures my imagination is one that I didn't see, but that I read about, that I heard about from a first-hand witness. Many of you may have heard of Cardinal Van Thuan, who was a Vietnamese cardinal. He worked in Rome in his later years, and I had the chance to get to hear him many times. And he would tell the story about the many years that he was in prison, and that all he longed for was to be able to celebrate Mass. And those prisoners who were gathered with him longed for that opportunity to participate in Mass as well. And so people would smuggle into the prison in a medicine bottle a few drops of wine and a few crumbs of bread. And every day at 3 o'clock, he would take a few of those crumbs, put them in his hand, put a few drops of wine in his hand as well, and offer there the Eucharistic sacrifice. For those who were imprisoned, it was that sign that God indeed loved them and that God was present. Every time that Mass is celebrated, we know that Jesus is truly there. I'm so grateful to my brother priests for all that they're doing to make sure that the Mass continues to be celebrated, even when public Mass isn't an option. I know that they're praying as they're called to as priests on behalf of all of you It's the beautiful privilege that we have to be able to offer sacrifices on the part of the church. As they celebrate Mass, whether it be in a humble rectory chapel or a beautiful cathedral, it's that opportunity that we have as a church to give to God the Father the gift that Jesus gave to us. It's the way in which we renew the world. It's the way in which we renew our faith. We give thanks for that gift this evening.